The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.
Friday, 15th of May.
The FujiCast.
It's a website special today on the FujiCast. It's like a click and collect of information, Kev, where you don't even have to stand in a queue. Welcome to the FujiCast, a daily photography podcast. Yes, we have the Fuji in the title, but you can shoot whatever you like. And of course, today, it being websites, it doesn't matter what you shoot, because this is about the website that you're designing, whether that be one for your business or whether that be one maybe for your hobby or whatever you're doing. That's what it's about today. How are you, Kev?
All right.
You good?
Yeah, not bad. Been sat in the garden, having a beer, putting my face to the sun.
Oh, dear. For those, by the way, thinking, if you pick your podcast up at about 8 o'clock in the morning, that doesn't mean that Kev's been sitting there since 6:30 this morning swigging beer. Well, it might do, actually. I don't know.
Well, actually, yeah.
Are you on airport time?
Well, I have no idea. I don't even know what day of the week it is. It's bin day today. Not bin day, clap day, isn't it?
It's
That's
what
the
day?
highlight of the week.
Oh, it's clap day, yes.
Oh, no, that was yesterday.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
I told you I have no idea what day of the week it is.
It's today, Sunday. Oh, God.
Yesterday we clapped.
Yesterday we clapped, yeah. We broke another pan, actually, in our place. Not a pan, a spoon. We broke another spoon. We don't have any wooden spoons left. Our Jack and Thomas have gone dunk, 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 so much these things, the handles have been breaking and all kinds of stuff.
Well, I'm about to embark on a charity doorstep photo thing for Malmesbury.
All right.
So I got a message on Facebook from somebody whose wedding I photographed, and they moved off to New Zealand, and the last time I saw them was at their wedding, and then they ended up coming back and moving to Malmesbury, and they weren't in Malmesbury originally. Right. But anyway, she messaged me this morning and said, I've got this idea of doing some fundraising, and I was like, yeah, why not? So we're gonna do the doorstep stuff. Now we're allowed to kind of stand in front of people, but the money's going to go to Malmesbury Food Bank, and it won't be, we're basically going to say, look, I'm going to come around all the streets, and I'm going to take your pictures. I'm going to stick it on a big website. Maybe we'll stick something up in the town hall when this is all done, and archive it and all that kind of stuff. And if you want to give some money to the to the food bank, absolutely on your. It's not, we're just going to do it that way. So, but also it'll give me reason to get my camera out, my GFX 100, which has been sat in the corner of the room, just losing me money by existing.
We've been talking about doing these street portraits. You are going to get straight in there with a bit of practice now, because you're going to have to find your inner extrovert. Inner extrovert? Can that be such a thing? Because can I take your portrait? Can I make your portrait? Is something that you don't often do.
No, but I would imagine I'm going to do this rapidly, and I would imagine it's going to be grip and grin. People standing there staring at the camera, smiling, holding their kids dear life.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. It's not for art's sake. It's for a little bit of fundraising and posterity.
I know you though. You're not going to just snap and go. You're going to be thinking about it, aren't you? I know you. You're not going to be able to do something that's got no artistry to it at all.
Well, I'm thinking of starting on Thursday when clap day comes. Now it all depends, of course. By Thursday, things might have been relaxed a bit more. I don't know. So
I think people will still be clapping, I think, for a little while to come. Maybe. I hope.
I think it's going to be like in 6 years' time, when this is all in history and well forgotten, people will still be going out on Thursday night to have a good old clap together.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they won't forget why they're doing it, but there might be some of the kids will be wondering, what are Mum and Dad clapping about on a Thursday? Those are like one or two at the moment. I did get a message earlier from a friend who was talking about how he thought this would move forward. And he, where was I? I want to find the bit in the thread in the text where he said, diddler, 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 diddler. Oh, yeah, and as he thinks some permanent change to prevent such spreads in the future, handshakes could well be banned for life.
It's funny, actually. I was thinking about that while I was lying in the garden earlier with my face to the sun. Yeah. And I was thinking, I wonder if, what will be like in 10 years' time? Will it just be simply the same, or will we forever have this, will there always be a seat spare next to us at a football game, or will there always be lines on the floor in the supermarkets? And the WHO guy yesterday said that, this isn't going to go away. This is going to be like HIV and measles. It's going to be here forever.
Well, I saw that piece as well, and I thought we're a sociable beast, us human beings, most of us, and I can't see that we would become less sociable in the long term. Notwithstanding, of course, this has been a dreadful pandemic and will go on being an issue for a while. But I just can't see. I don't. It's maybe I'm wrong.
I know it's tough, isn't it? I do think it's going to go on forever. But I also at the same time don't think it's going to be anywhere near as virulent and all that kind of stuff. I think, we'll be thinking back to the time before and the time after, a little bit like the people in the war, where, those wars, what were they, 5-6 years? And there was a very different life before and after, for sure.
Oh, yeah,
and it's I think it might be similar to that. And I think also at the same time, without sounding too grim reaperish, I think there'll be a lot of positives come out of it.
I think so. Well, I hope so, certainly. But
anyway, we've been going 15 minutes.
I know. Just very quickly though, I was talking to Danny, who I was sharing those text messages with, about what would replace the handshake, and he was suggesting elbow bump and the bow and all the rest of it. I said, thank God, if the handshake did go, get rid of all those men that have to do squeezy handshake death. Yeah, you meet those people, don't you? That sort of, they grip you in that kind of like, I've got you, Mullins kind of way.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. For years they've always done this in like South Korea and Japan and everything like that. When you're on the tube, you always see a little man or a little woman going up with cleanse wipes and cleaning all of the handles and the bits you hold onto on the underground escalators and everything. None of that happens in London. I mean, London's filthy. The underground, absolutely filthy.
Don't let's start that one. We're going to be going down a whole new other tunnel. Anyway, disclaimer about today's show. This is a show about websites. Okay, we are more than likely to talk about a web server or a method or a back end that is not one that you use. Please do not take it personally if we prefer one over the other. We still love you and your site, and and your parents and anybody else you're related to. And we'd more than happily all get along fine propping up a bar just outside the House of Photography in the years to come. If you are offended in any way, shape or form, however, I'm not quite sure what to say other than
don't be rude,
and we can carry on. Are you ready for the questions?
Yeah.
This is one from Paul Cloden, who's in North Adelaide, in Australia. Have you been to Australia? I've been a listener since episode 1. Lord knows how I knew about it. I haven't missed an episode anyway. Well, many of your listeners are professional photographers. I'm sure there's also many amateurs like myself. In discussing websites, it might be interesting to mention the free website available with your monthly Lightroom subscription. Now, you mentioned this yesterday, Kev. Is it good? Is it something that you should or would consider using professionally? Is it something that maybe is really for those that aren't turning a coin and are really happy to have something that looks good, but they're not worried about search engine optimization and so on? Yeah,
I think that actually some of the websites I've seen built on that, I've not built one myself, look really quite nice. It's very easy to produce one. It's more portfolio based, gallery style stuff. Of course, it's not going to be very SEO friendly, particularly, and it's not going to be very lightweight, particularly, and you're going to be paying for it via your subscription. Of course, you pay for most hosting anyway. As soon as you change to Capture One, for example, and decide to give up your Creative Cloud, that's the end of your website too.
That's true. Yeah. So as long as you're in the family, you're okay. But if you come outside the family, not such a good thing. Nick Church, I always heard that WordPress-based sites are best in terms of SEO, search engine optimization, but my Squarespace site seems to be performing perfectly well for the search terms I've chosen. Question is, are we at a point where the main players all perform about the same for SEO, or is there still an advantage for WordPress?
I think there's a huge advantage for WordPress, like huge, but with a massive caveat that for example, Squarespace is not very quick in terms of page load. There's a lot of script and everything that goes on behind it. So for those of you that want to test your website, you can go to either Google Page Speed Test, just bang that into Google, pop your URL in, and it will tell you the results. Or if you want to see a little bit more detailed, you can go to something called GT Metrics. We'll link to all of this stuff, of course. The GT metrics will give you a little bit more. It will give you like a water flow and everything, so you can see exactly what's holding things up. WordPress is better for SEO because it's absolutely more controllable, more manageable. You can control things like the URL structure. You have proper control over categories and tags. You can do a lot more with things like images in terms of using web-optimized images and kind of the structure images these days that Google wants to see, the lightweight offloaded images, if you like. Squarespace doesn't do any of that stuff. However, you can still rank. You can still have a website on Squarespace that outranks everything else. If you have enough momentum with it and enough social shares and links back to it from reputable sources and all of that stuff, or it could be very niche, or the keywords you're testing against are not very competitive. So, you know, there's pluses and negatives for both in SEO point of view. But I think absolutely WordPress is like hands down better for SEO performance and all of the kind of technical stuff. But you do need to get your hands a little bit dirty. And for people who don't want to get their hands dirty, there are other things in place.
Yeah, Nick actually got involved in a conversation within the Facebook group about the performance of the site, and it was pointed out the SEO thing about it maybe Squarespace not being ideal in any way, shape or form. He said, well, that was my view, but when I launched the site, I chose a strong keyword set, ranked at number 93 to start with. 12 months later, I've worked on the SEO with the Squarespace site, and he's now at number 3. So
yeah, and that's fine. But the fact is that, you know, if somebody else was doing exactly the same SEO for exactly the same keywords on a WordPress site, they would almost definitely be outranking that.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question then, because I know, and this honesty moment.
Warning.
Maybe, yes, because you and I, well, you know that I'm swapping to Squarespace. Mm-hmm. Now, for years and years and years, I have had a WordPress site. I've never had a Squarespace site for anything to do with photography. It's all been WordPress. But I've run a business which didn't rely upon search engine optimization. It was nice when it came, but it wasn't the most important thing in my world. It was my businesses have always been built around word of mouth, venues that I've worked for, and professionals that have asked me to go back and do more work again. But as you found out the other day when looking at my site, and you should not reference the current site that I have as of the time of this published show, because it doesn't rank. It's awful. It might look nice, but it doesn't perform. And I talked to you a long time ago about Squarespace, and you've always said, no, don't do it, stay where you are. But now even you are considering Squarespace, and I'm wondering why.
Well, it's so. For example, the Ministry of Shadows is Squarespace. My workshop website is Squarespace. My previous workshop website was Squarespace. Currently, f16.click and my wedding website are still on WordPress. Now, I'll come back to that question. But if we reverse a little bit, you know, one of the key factors for Google these days is performance. And not so much performance that, you know, we're all sitting here on our nice big computers with, you know, 36 gig of RAM or whatever, etc. But the way that Google wants your website to load is rapidly on an average mobile phone that's using 4G technology, perhaps even 3G technology, and that's the benchmark. So when you go to something like Google PageSpeed Test or GT Metrics, it's going to tell you how does your website load on a desktop, and usually that's going to be a lot faster than it does on a mobile. So you know, and you have opportunities to make it quicker. For example, you can use what they call WebP images these days, which are a progressive web format for images. So instead of JPEGs, they're called WEBP. Now, right now, you can't do that in Squarespace. That doesn't mean that's not going to change in the future, but that gives you a massive, massive leap in performance. However, the thing is, you're not always going to be kind of competing against people where performance is the most important thing. If you're the only person in the barrel, you're going to float to the top. If there's other people in the barrel, you're going to fight to get to the top. Now, the reason why I really like Squarespace, in terms of the ability to make websites look beautiful very, very quickly, like ridiculously quickly. And I also believe that Squarespace in the future will get over all of this stuff. They're fully aware that the main reason why people typically will avoid Squarespace if they know too much about it is because you can't do simple things such as indent more than 2 levels in the navigation, use proper category slugs and URLs. So they're aware of that, and that will only ever get better. And where Squarespace is singing is in the simplicity of it. You can't break it. You can't have something that's just slightly aligned to the left and you don't quite know how, and you've installed a plugin that's cocked everything up and deleted things, and you've got a page injection from the host that you're using, and all of that stuff goes away with Squarespace. And I'm at the point now with my wedding website where I'm just a bit fed up with the WordPress technology, the architecture, the way that's going. For me, seems to be getting a bit heavy and cumbersome, and I don't like the way they've changed their page editor, the Gutenberg stuff. Although it's more lightweight, I don't like the way that it works. And half of me is just thinking, you know what? My website gets a lot of traffic anyway because it's been around for a long time. So it will take a hit if I move it to Squarespace. But actually, I'm hoping that it would kind of bounce back pretty quick, entirely based on the history of the website. So this is kind of the third prong of this conversation, is that if your website is old and well liked by Google and well respected in terms of its architecture, its history, its links, then if you move to something else, another platform, whether that's Squarespace or whatever, then it will have an impact. But it will have less of an impact than if you were starting from scratch, right, and you go straight to Squarespace versus somebody who's done a well-optimized WordPress site. I just like the way that the images render. I like the simplicity of Squarespace. So whilst I haven't done it yet, I am borderline thinking of moving to Squarespace.
With my own though, and we'll crack on with a question from Jonathan Clapton in a moment. But with my own, and this might help other people thinking about this. You might be thinking, well, I want to move to Wix or Squarespace or something else. And but the thing is, I've got so much. It's like tentacles all over my site. There's lots of different URLs and structures, and I'm not taking any of that with me. I've had that website for many, many years. So I am effectively starting from scratch, aren't I?
Yeah, and what you have to think about with all of this stuff is that people spend an inordinate amount of time trying to squeeze every inch of SEO out of their websites. And often I've fallen foul of this myself in the past. You get the website, perfectly SEO optimized, it's flying, but it looks rubbish. Yeah. It's lightweight. You spend too much time thinking about thin content and pages that don't really have any meaning. You put them on there because you think they're going to be good for Google, and actually what you're doing then is a total disservice, because ultimately when somebody searches for something in Google, let's just say they search for wedding photographer Berkshire, and they land on your website, and your website looks beautiful and it's got nice big images and it's easy to navigate and it's got big calls to action, they're going to spend longer on that website because it's a beautiful place to be. If they search for the same thing and they land on another website that is perhaps ranks a bit higher than you, but is amazingly optimized for SEO, but actually looks a little bit naff, the images have been squeezed too much for speed, they won't spend any time on that website because it'll be a chore for them to do that. Google will recognize that and think, hang on, they're all spending time on that Squarespace site and not on that WordPress site, so we'll start promoting the Squarespace site instead. So there's a whole load of stuff that happens around heuristics and user interface, and the human nature of search is as much a factor as the SEO. So you have to think about all those kind of things. A website ultimately has to be like a newspaper, easy to read, easy to navigate, and quick to consume the content from.
So perhaps don't get so caught up on whether it's... I mean, there is a danger this is going to be like a Squarespace versus WordPress episode, and it shouldn't be. In the same way it used to be DSLR versus mirrorless. Let's crack on with Jonathan Clapton's question. Great timing on the website special, guys. Complete SEO novice here. I took the opportunity at the start of lockdown to set up my first website on Squarespace, which I published a month ago. I'm reasonably happy with it, and I thought diligently optimized image sizes, keywords, tags, etc. before making it public, but it's still not appearing in Google searches, and it doesn't seem to be listed. I registered with Google Analytics, but haven't had time to fully explore that yet. I've linked my Instagram account, but don't have any other backlinks as I'm just starting out. This isn't quite a business yet. Question is, how long should it reasonably take to get a new website appearing on Google? And is there anything I can and should be doing to help?
Okay, so it should take maybe an hour for it to be on Google.
Right. Okay.
So something is wrong somewhere down the line. A number of things could happen here. So Squarespace, there's a little tick box that says hide this from search engines. As long as you've not got that switched on still. If you still have that, and that's switched on by default when you start a Squarespace site. So if you go via the trial route, so make sure that's not ticked. You want your website to not be hidden from Google. The other thing is to test to see if it is actually in there. rather than, there's a difference between being able to see it when you search for your keywords and whether it's actually been indexed or not. So the easiest thing to do is just type into the Google search bar site, SITE : then your domain name, so without the www and all that kind of stuff. So in this case, it could be site : Jonathan Clapton photography.co.uk. Hit the enter key, and Google will return to you all of the pages that it has indexed just on your website. And as long as you haven't got it hidden, then it will show you the ones that are there. That doesn't mean they're going to be ranking highly for anything, but they will be in the search engine. And the final thing you can do, if you've got Webmaster Tools, which I think he just mentioned he did, or Google Console as they call it these days, all your websites, your Squarespace websites, your WordPress websites, your Wix websites, all of them will allow you to have a sitemap. And it's usually called sitemap.xml. So jonathanClaptonphotography.co.uk/sitemap.xml. Just pop that into Google. You'll see a whole load of probably gibberish to your eyes. It's an XML kind of route path through your website. In Google Console, go to the sitemap area where it says submit sitemap, type in sitemap.xml, and away you go, and then it will start gobbling up your content.
Squarespace let you, now you're going to have to help me out here because I'm going to get it wrong, but you can either host with them or you can forward through your web provider, can't you?
No, Squarespace is a software as service solution, which means it's hosted entirely on Squarespace.
Right.
WordPress you can host in different places. Squarespace you only can host on Squarespace servers. So there's a slight difference between Squarespace and WordPress. Like I said, Squarespace is a software as service, so you're renting the service, if you like, on their servers. WordPress is a fully fledged content management system which can be installed anywhere. It can be installed on Macs, Windows, information servers, your local PC. You can download it on your local computer and install it that way as well. But typically, it's going to be hosted by your web host.
And of course, they'll have Squarespace will have their own backups, etc. as well if anything goes wrong.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're a big old business, and the same will be true of places like Wix and stuff. Yes. In some cases, you might have to pay extra for backups, but typically, you would expect a decent provider, web host provider, to be doing that kind of stuff for you. All my WordPress stuff is on SiteGround, which is an amazing WordPress host system. Expensive, but amazing.
Now, Denis Pass has asked a question a few people have asked. Would love to hear the pros and cons of including all the services you offer, i.e. weddings, portraits, real estate, etc. on one site versus having a separate website for each. Is separate citing better? How would you suggest choosing the URL for each? Or would you?
Well, I mean, my kind of take on this is as long as the offerings are fairly similar, and they're not completely different photography styles, then you can get away with doing it on the same website. So, for example, if you've got wedding photography and family photography, as I do on my wedding photography site, I have a tab where you click and you see the wedding, you see the family stuff. However, I would think twice about putting things like pet photography with wedding photography, or boudoir for sure. You don't want somebody's in their office when they're allowed to go back to their office, types in wedding photography in Berkshire, and then a great big pair of
don't be rude.
That's not what you want. So think about that very carefully. But otherwise, I don't think there's any problems in showing off your different styles. But just make sure that they're complementary rather than totally different.
I'm personally going to go with commercial work alongside weddings. I'd always separated them because it was always that, I'd feel a bit uncomfortable showing somebody in the commercial world that I shoot weddings because it might put them off me. And maybe I've got longer in the tooth now and thinking, no, actually it shows breadth of ability. I wouldn't, you're absolutely right. I wouldn't put boudoir in with commercial, or boudoir. I wouldn't put boudoir in with anything really, because it's its own art and its own right, and there are some folk that are squeamish about it, and you have to recognise that fact. But
what I would say to interrupt, to somebody like you who's about to embark on that, 2 points, right? And we've discussed this offline anyway. But now imagine you go and do a shot of the Taj Mahal. A corporate shoot comes in, come and take pictures of the Taj Mahal, and you do it, and then you put that on your website, and that goes absolutely viral. There's beautiful pictures that, I don't know, Daily Mirror pick it up and it's posted online, and it's beautiful. probably thereafter, when people type in Neil James looking for your wedding pictures, they're going to see pictures of the Taj Mahal. And at that point, they're probably going to go, oh, he doesn't do weddings anymore. Okay, so that's something to think about. Well, I'm not saying that would happen, of course, but because I've seen your Taj Mahal pictures and they're rubbish. But
that wasn't the Taj Mahal. That was a Sydney Opera House. That's no wonder it didn't look right. But I do appreciate what you're saying. At the same time, I have had this when I originally had a wedding website. They were all together. It was, I know, admittedly, it was quite a few years ago, and there weren't so many photographers around, but it worked quite well. My concern, I suppose, is based around business as well now, and that being a specialist as a wedding photographer now, I think is going to be far harder in practicality terms than showing that you can do a bit of everything. And I think that might help some of my clients as well. I think, oh, you can do that, right? I'd like you to do this for me. I get that. Yeah. I always wonder if that's sometimes been a barrier that I've personally put up at weddings. When somebody said to me, "Oh, wedding photographer, what else do you do then? What's your day job?" And I've always said, "No, this is wedding photography. This is very serious. This is what I do all the time." And a lot of the time people might, and I've heard this, and we had an interviewee that said exactly this, where somebody said, "Oh, right. Do you do commercial as well then? Oh, fantastic. I've got a whole company." And then that leads to something else, to something else, to something else, to something else. And that,
I've had commercial business from wedding clients, definitely. And so I totally agree with you. I mean, this is slightly different to having the website stuff. That's more about, being more promotional aware, I guess, of stuff. But, I suppose the final point on that is if 80% of your business is weddings and 10% is portraits and 10% is corporate, make sure your website is weighted accordingly. So 80% of your website is about weddings, 10% is about corporate, 10% is about portraits. That way you will give the right lean in both to the human person and to Google. You don't want Google getting it all mixed up, that's for sure.
No. Right, I thought this would happen. We've got loads of questions, and we've been quite thorough with each particular one. So what I'm going to do, if you don't hear... We have one more question coming up, which is split into 3 parts. But if you don't hear your question read out now, do not fear. I'm going to put it down there in the must deal with this over the next week and a bit pile, or maybe longer, so that we can answer those questions that we got about the website. So don't worry if you don't hear it. Just keep listening to the show, and you will hear it sooner or later. Anna McCarthy. There's a 3-part question here, Kev. I'd like to ask Kev views on alt texting images and how critical this is on any site. Well, she says news site, but I think any site personally. On the hierarchy of priorities, is it very important or something I can do later on a rainy day maybe?
Okay, so to understand this, we need to understand what alt text is. So alt text traditionally would be that little yellow box that would hover up over a picture on Internet Explorer and stuff like that, or the description. And originally, it stands for alternative text, and originally it was for screen readers. So effectively, it was for people with partial vision or total vision loss would use a screen reader, which would read the web page, and it would say, "You are at Anna McCarthy's website. Anna McCarthy is a wedding photographer from such and such." And then it would get to the picture, and it would read out the alt text.
Isn't that funny? That's just how Anna sounds.
This is a picture of a wedding in Bermuda. However, if there was no alt text, that's when the screen reader would cause a problem. Now, I remember when I used to build websites for a living, we used to spend 90% of the production time was spent making a website what they call accessible, which was absolutely the right thing to do. However, it was the most difficult thing to do, and that was an EU directive. And so, project costs were huge based on trying to implement a website for maybe 0.5% of the visitors, less than that. So alt text is important, and Google still does look at the alt text and does kind of understand it. Now, what I would say about it is, if you've got a website with 10,000 pictures on it and you haven't alt text them all, going through them and alt texting them is going to take you a long time.
Well, fortunately, we have a lot of rain in this country.
For a lot longer than that, and the benefits probably going to be marginal in terms of effort involved. So I would say that going forward, you should always put alt text on images if you can. Now, an alt text, remember, right? This is the key thing. If the blog post is about a let's say it's a commercial shoot at the Taj Mahal. Remember those pictures? What you don't really want to be doing is every single picture saying commercial shoot at Taj Mahal, commercial shoot at Taj Mahal, commercial shoot at Taj Mahal. Because remember, that blind person who's having this read to them will be thinking, my little voice recognition machine's gone wrong.
It means nothing as well, because you say, well, okay, but what about the image?
Well, it's keyword stuffing. That's what it is. So you're doing that purely because you think it's going to help you rank in Google. And actually, you need to turn that thought process on your head and think, actually, I need to be writing these alt texts to help these people who are using screen readers. So the first alt text might say something like, picture of the Taj Mahal at dawn. Next picture might be a picture of the Taj Mahal from the east side with people walking in front of it. Right, yeah. So you describe it as if you were describing it to a blind person, effectively. That's the best way to do alt texting. Right. And it's a difficult thing to do and difficult thing to have enough kind of momentum to keep doing. But going forward, do it. I wouldn't necessarily worry about going back through all the archives and doing it.
If there's 20 pictures in a post, would you do it to every single one of those 20, or would you do it every other one, or every 3? Or
it depends on how much I want that post to rank. If it's if it's a new venue and I really loved it and it's a really great set of pictures and I want I really want it to get out there, I'll do it for everyone. If it's the Working Men's Club in Merthyr Tydfil, perhaps I won't be so diligent.
And alt tags, of course, it's not just a WordPress thing. It's in Wix and it's in Squarespace and all of them, isn't it? Really.
Don't mix up all of this technology with the provider. No. It's nothing to do with that. These are HTML standards. Yeah. These are web standards. So everything you see, WordPress and Squarespace and Wix, all they do is they spit out the HTML. HTML is very, very simple. They just spit that out. If you right-click on a browser on any web page and choose View Source, you'll see the HTML. All they're doing is enabling you to design that HTML visually and often quickly.
Okay. Also, is it true you should have your services listed in terms of hierarchy of what you offer displayed from left to right on the page, left being the top service?
Yes, it is true. So if you're in the Western world, if you're listening to us in China, where they read, I think, right to left and top down, then it's different. So I said earlier, think of it like a newspaper. Yeah. So the top left is more important than the bottom right.
So if you're a wedding photographer, it goes weddings, portraits, commercial, about, blah.
Yeah, and also the weighting of the sentences and the structure of the content in the page. So the stuff in the first paragraph is likely to be gobbled up by Google more hungrily than the stuff in the last paragraph.
And finally, she says, what would Kev's list be of must-haves on the homepage of a site?
I would say the most important thing for everybody to put on their website is a link to kevinmullinsphotography.co.uk.
No.
But if you're not going to do that...
well done. You've just made the lottery if everybody does that.
The thing is, it's hard because as photographers, what we really want is just to have beautiful pictures and people to come and go, oh, I love that. I want to book Anna, or I want to book Neil, or I want to book Kevin, or whatever. But unfortunately, Google doesn't work that way. So you do need some information. You need some text. The way that I typically do it is have a nice big headline image. I tend not to have the scrolling, what they call them, galleries these days. I then kind of have a little bit about me. Then I'll have a link, a nice visual reference to the latest blog posts. Then probably a little bit more about the style. And the most important thing about the homepage is that you make it easy for people to navigate. So remember those links to other parts of the page. Nice big calls to action, big calls to action. Boom, on my website is a massive box that says, hey, have you seen my new portfolio? I've just updated it. And it's been like that for 3 years. And of course, it's not just updated at all. It's been updated twice in those 3 years. But that's a call to action that tells people, oh, yeah, I'm going to click on this button.
I've always been a bit squeamish about calls to action. I think that's one thing I shall certainly do more, because that's something you advise.
Well, it's base level marketing. That you never see an advert for anything in a newspaper or magazine or online without a call to action.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just don't. There's always something.
Right. Well, I knew that this would overrun, so we're going to save these questions and do them over the next week and a bit. Oh, there is one that's just come in here. Raul Sharma says, what's the best picture you've ever seen of the Taj Mahal on a website? Not mine. Right, that's it. for another day, or tomorrow, interview day. Tomorrow, Russell Auld, the extraordinary photographer in the oceans, lives in southwest Australia, and the surfing shots, and then just what he has to say about the whole business of photographing people when you've got surf coming toward you at what looks like 100 miles an hour to me. It all happens so quickly. He's a fascinating character. He's a brilliant photographer. Russell Auld on the show tomorrow. And then everything happens as normal the rest of the weekend. Sunday service with Kev, and then we'll get back with some of your questions about websites next week as well. Thank you, Kev.
Monday is Martin Parr.
Monday, Martin Parr Day. So nothing goes back to normal till Tuesday. Really?
And then it's Tech Tuesday, Tech-Free Tuesday.
Tech-Free Tuesday. So nothing really goes back to normal till Wednesday.
No, because that's Photo Book Wednesday.
Photo Book Wednesday. Well, I was worried what you were going to rhyme with that one. Thursday then. Nothing goes back to normal till next Thursday.
Yeah.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production.
Goodbye, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. We're back tomorrow with another show. Well, unless we're fired, we'll talk to you then. Goodbye, sweetheart. Goodbye. Goodbye.